Thank you for having us here. It's wonderful. Very special group. I love your singing. I love the way the children get involved.
They do. It's really good. The makings things go for it.
They've got the
shout.
They've got the music.
Yeah, musical children. Well, it really is a great privilege to be here. I think to start off with, I thought it'd be good just to explain a bit about where we're coming from. I think what's in our hearts. Have we got Bibles? Okay.
No, we don't believe in that.
Yeah, could we start with 1 Samuel, chapter 3, verses 1 to 10. Shall we thank you?
1 Samuel.
1 Samuel, chapter 3, and verses 1 to 10. I love the scripture because it gives, I feel like, an eternal picture of our children. Yeah, please.
The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There were not many visions. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel. Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." So he went and lay down. Again the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." "My son," Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord. The word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. A third time the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling, as at the other times, "Samuel, Samuel." Then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening."
I'm sure you'll love this passage, especially when we think about our children, because it's God's calling our children. I think that's such a big thing, really, what, as parents, we want to pass on is we want our children to be representatives of God. We want our children to be what God wants them to be. But really that so much comes down to God's calling them. And that's something I feel is really key for us in our prayers. It's just that God will call our children, that He would reveal Himself to them, that they would have a very real faith, a personal and a real connection with Him. So I think that's something very much in my heart. I think probably for all of us, we very much want that. It's a wonderful thing to think that God would call our children, a beautiful thing, and that He would, He would have amazing plans for them in that way. The second thing I want to share was I grew up in a very old-fashioned family, and one of my uncles, when he was 20, had a nervous breakdown. Now, I'm not sure all the details of what went on, but I think that it was the 60s, and they were experimenting a lot with all sorts of brain section or whatever, but there was strange stuff going on. The thing I think I would like to share is how the effect that had on me. As a young child, you watch your relative, he's not quite right, and you wonder what's going on there. And of course the fear was, will the same thing happen to me? I was in my teens, I was probably the definition of a workaholic, working like crazy all hours of the days to get A levels that are required for better school. And I remember being told, you're just like your Uncle David. And of course, on the surface, you laugh it off, but underneath, it hits very deep. There's a scripture I'd like to read, and I feel like this is something very much for me, very real for me. Matthew 7, verse 24 to 27.
I'll read it.
Thanks, Ben.
Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who builds his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash.
I think this really sums up so much for me what raising children with God is about, because without God, quite literally, we fall to pieces. But with God comes an amazing strength, and it's meant a lot to me to be able to have that desire to pass on my faith, our faith, to the next generation, because it gives them tremendous strength. So those are sort of two things, two thoughts that I would like to introduce to you, or just sort of base a little bit of today on. That's me, that's us. I think probably as parents I talk a lot with that in mind. Malcolm very kindly sent through some thoughts, and maybe we can start off with these and then open it up for a bit of a Q&A. I think there are 5 questions. The first one, I think, I forget the whole sentence, but it was about challenging moments in our lives as parents. I think life as parents is amazingly busy. I mean, it's incredible how busy as parents in our 30s and 40s and 50s, how busy we are with our children. And 2 things I had in mind was that stage when the children start to grow up. I think that's quite a challenging stage, really from 7 onwards, I think. Children seem to be quite cute until a certain age, and then they become more adolescents and they grow up. And I think that transition from being mum and dad to being friends is a very important one. Some parents find this easier than others, but it is a very important stage, I think, that we're able to to make this move from being primarily just providers, helpers, great supporters, to being friends. We grew up together. I think for me, that was quite a challenging stage for us. My mother was a great example to me, but I always felt like I found that difficult, just to be able to do that transition well. And I think with that transition becomes the importance of weekends. Weekends become so important because, especially I think with children in secondary school, they get so busy during the week, they don't have the freedom after school they used to have. And our weekends become so important, I think. I used to feel quite discouraged if on Monday I felt the weekend hadn't been used well for the children, because so much was going on. If I didn't make the most of the weekends, then the opportunity with Dannatt we miss. So that was one thing I very much had in mind, the weekends. So challenging moments. The second thing Malcolm mentioned was friendship with other children. I think Ben, you can share about this.
Yeah. So
just friendship with other children for you guys growing up.
Yeah, so it's kind of, it says here how to encourage, develop helpful friendships with other kids and how to be involved as a parent. So for me, I always felt very grateful to Mum and Dad because they would always facilitate the option and the opportunity for me to build relationships with other kids my age in the church. So they were when I look back, they were incredibly charitable, being the taxi service post Friday night church to any sleepover and come and collect me on a Saturday morning. So and I can imagine as I look back then, as I when I was 14, I thought, oh, they'll just collect me because they just do. But now that's what your child will think now. But as I look back, I think how grateful I am to them driving all that way. They'd drive 40 minutes from Yateley to Marlow for me to spend time with another guy called Elliot. He's a Christian. He's a Christian now. He's probably my best friend, and I just really feel so grateful for that. And I think it's a real, it's a great example of giving your children the best chance to build the relationships and build the building blocks for their lives that are going to help them in the long term. Because I can imagine that on a Saturday morning there are more pressing matters than collecting your child from a sleepover. And it would be very, very easy, I think, for Mum and Dad to have felt like, well, you won't have a sleepover, because I've got a lot to do this weekend. And I think that was a really great example. And I think a lot of these relationships I built as a young, as a teenager, and even I knew Elliot from age 5, and those relationships were cultivated. And now Elliot's my best friend. He's a Christian, and we mutually encourage each other spiritually. And I've got more friends like that. I've got Alex Heath, who I speak to every week on the phone. Heinrich's a great friend to me. A lot of friends who really had our relationship invested in by me and also by other people, Mum and Dad, who've helped cultivate that. So I'd encourage you to definitely give your children a chance to have great relationships with other people, other kids in the church their age by giving facilitating that as much as possible. Does that make sense?
We enjoyed that. We used to sit having coffee in the coffee area above the swimming pool.
Yes.
And what you'd do is you'd spend time with the parents of the others, so you get
and you guys been swimming.
Yeah, you get fellowship time at the same time.
We'd have a great time rooting us out.
Exactly.
And you'd be crashing around the pool with Heinrich and Francois.
But that you were able to build strong, discipling relationships, and I was able to build friendships, which I now have as those fellowship.
So it was very important that it was something that was quite enjoyable for us. But thank you very much for sharing that. I was trying to coral reef this is what I was
Coral reef,
saying.
yeah. Bracknell.
Another thing here I've got written down is how to help our children with their decisions. There are all kinds of decisions, and one of the best way of doing this, Shelby, do you want to mention anything about that?
Well, I suppose it depends how old they are, really, doesn't it? I think the older they become, our children tend to become more assertive, which is great, because they're growing up and they're beginning to become young adults, especially as they enter into the adolescent stage. And so I think for me, I'm quite a controlling person naturally, a lot more than Tim would be. Tim's more of he's not easygoing at all actually, he's very intense, but he's very, quite good at listening and very, just with the children he would have been less controlling naturally than me. So I had to work very hard on being a good listener and not reacting when Ben or Alice would try to assert their opinions in a strong way, and sometimes in an extreme way. Extreme language like never or always might be used, or even it might be quite accusatory at times. But my challenge, Alice isn't here, so that's great. Yeah. She's doing well, by the way. There's nothing wrong with Alice.
She's having a Bible study today. That's why she
can't see. Yeah, she couldn't hear because she's studying the Bible with one of the teens. Anyway, but I think at times it was tempting, and even now, Ben's 26 next March. Yeah. Getting very old, and Alice has just turned 24. Just for me to make sure that I don't react when they might come out with some decision they've made or that they're thinking about, but to really be calm and remember that God is in control and it'll actually be fine. And it may even pass, and this may just be an idea that is here today and gone tomorrow, which a lot of them are actually, especially when the children are younger. A lot of these ideas, they come and they go. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, just remembering that all of our children are on a journey, and it's like there's no right way for them to become Christians, or to, even when they become Christians, to stay Christians. Life's full of a lot of convolutions, and there's no motorway to heaven. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of side roads to get lost down for a while, and dead ends and U-turns to be had. And for me, I've had to really remember to trust God, so that when it's these decisions are being made, or when these challenging moments, as Tim spoke about, come, and you feel like, this isn't going well, or this isn't the right way, or this isn't what God wants to say. No, this will be fine. I don't need to react. I don't need to take charge. I just need to love unconditionally and have faith that this road will be traveled, but that God will guide my child or my children, and that they'll learn through their mistakes, and it will be okay. Not till the day we are all dead is it over. And even in Thames Valley, we have people who became Christians after they went to university. We have people who are still at university and haven't become Christians. We've got a real mix, and it's okay. I didn't become a Christian until I was 22. People in Thames Valley, we had Sid who didn't become a Christian until he was 92. Was he 92 or 93? I can't remember. So everybody has a different path, and I think the overwhelming thing I've had to learn is whatever happens, I've got to trust God. Mm-hmm. Just because so-and-so's child seems to be like that doesn't mean all is lost. Mm-hmm. And I know that some of you might think, well, it's all right for you. Your kids are Christians and you've got it all sorted. No, it's not all sorted. There's a long life ahead. We hope. There's a lot more years to go, and yes. Like for me, having been a Christian for 34 years now, it's like it hasn't always been straightforward. Yeah. And there are ups and there are downs, and there are winding roads and dead ends and all that stuff I was just saying. So I think for me, just with helping them to make decisions, just trying not to give advice and say, well, but not to force it. You know, to say, would you like to know what I think? If you're not asked. Would you like to know? If not asked, which does happen. Can I tell you what I think? Not, would you like to know what I think? Let me tell you now what I think. Would you like to know what I think? And it might perhaps be worth considering this, you know.
Yeah.
So, but that's, I think when they're younger it's different, but I'm talking more about adolescence. Does that answer that question?
Could we give some examples of decisions?
Do the tech one.
Okay.
We'll have some dirt on Ben, that's it.
Sacrificial lamb.
I can't remember what
Sacrificial lamb, yeah.
So I was
She's not wearing that again.
No. She always does. She's been doing it ever since she was young. So I was choosing my GCSE options when I was about 14.
Okay.
And you know, when you're 14, you're not thinking about what's going to help you long term. You're just thinking about the classes that you find fun. And I had this strange idea that I was going to do technology GCSE, and I wasn't really good at technology. But you know, you got to do, it was basically just woodwork, and I liked the idea. I didn't fancy doing anything, you know, that actually I felt would be hard work. So I just wanted to have a good time in the workshop and just, you know, have fun. And you know, my mum, I never liked French, and mum was like, so I said to mum, yeah, I'm going to do technology GCSE, and mum was like, what about French GCSE? And I was like, no, I'm doing technology GCSE, and she, through hook or by crook, got me round to do French GCSE instead of technology GCSE. Now I look back on doing what would have happened if I'd done technology GCSE. Most people who did technology GCSE in my school did terribly. So I'm actually really glad that I did French and I got a top grade in it. And that was, I feel very grateful that, you know, God put mum there and helped me guide to make a wiser decision. She didn't force me. It was strongly encouraged.
You're so great at French.
Yeah, bon. And at the time, I look back and I just think it was by God's grace, because I didn't really. If it had been by myself, I would have done technology, and it would have distracted from my other subjects. I wouldn't have done well. That's what happened to other kids. I could see in the year, and you know, French was something that I actually got good at. You know, so that was a time where I was strongly encouraged, and never forced, but strongly encouraged to make a wise decision, even though it wouldn't have been my first choice of decision. So, does that make sense?
But if your child's great at tech, go for it.
Yeah, go for it. I was not good at tech, but I was self-deceived. I thought it was going to be fun, but you know.
Yeah.
The next question was around body parts. What
Body parts.
Wags.
Okay.
Girls and girls.
I'm not quite sure. Yeah, boys and girls, all these things. The thing that we had to our advantage was, obviously from a very rural farming country background, we were, as children, we were always raised with, I think, everything in our household reproduced. We always had ducks, we always had chickens, we always had goats, we had horses, we had cattle. I mean, everything was reproducing. It just amazes me how much really was going on in my childhood. My mother was amazing at this stuff. It's a bit like energy touch reproduce. You know? But we were fairly broke, I remember, when the children were young. And we needed to raise some money for things. So we decided to have puppies. But actually for us, or for me, was very easy, because things you do in your childhood are just easy. They just are. So we would produce these really quite sort of high-end Labradors, good Labradors. So we'd make some money there sometimes. But the reason I mentioned it was just an opportunity to talk about body parts without it being a big deal. I remember Ben Alice coming to watch one of the dogs mated. You must have been about no younger, I would think, because we got the dog in 2003. 2003. We were breeding by 2005. And you were fully involved.
Yeah.
I think the way I want to present that is that there are sort of maybe natural things that are going on in your family which help. That was something that helped us with that. It was just a very easy sort of extension without any weirdness or strangers. I can't really say the right way to do that, but I would say why not think about things that are the way it's going. That may be helpful. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I feel like Mum and Dad did a good job of letting things come up, like, others would suddenly ask, what's or we heard this word, what does it mean? And rather than being sat down at the table, saying, right, today we're going to figure out how it all happens, it was more, we'd start asking, like, we'd hear a word, and we'd be like, we haven't heard that word before, and we'd ask them, what's, and then they'd be like, right, now we'll tell you. So it wasn't like we didn't have to know, it wasn't appropriate, so it was when it came up that was when, I think, and that to me made sense, and I think that seemed like a good idea. So.
Thank you. The last question was about helping our children to have a resilient faith. I think a conviction I had from very early on was I really wanted Ben Alice to grow up knowing the Bible. I remember being at a conference, and Ben was about probably a month old. I went to this conference, and I talked to Sam Lang, who wrote a book that we always read at that stage. And he said, the thing that really he looks back on is really encouraging his children to know the Bible. We certainly took that very much to heart. When they were little, they had taught us Bibles, and we were really quite fanatical, I think.
We were forced at that age. We were forced at that age to read our Bibles.
In the morning and evening, every morning. I think, I would guess,
I'm glad
I think morning and evening, every day of your life.
Yeah, until I was about 10 or something.
Yes. And that, though it sounds very boring and very heavy, it definitely wasn't. It was fun.
Family devotionals were great, by the way. Acting devotionals, Herod and the worms. Dad would be Herod, would be the worms. It was great.
Eating them up.
So I think just, if in doubt, one thing in parenting, I feel, is the more we can teach our children the scriptures, a great blessing they'll be in the future, because children and adults do need to know right and wrong, and there's so much good narrative in the scriptures that opens itself up to wonderful storytelling. So that's something that I put down with that in mind. So anyway, now it's over to you. We would love to know your thoughts.
Just a quick question on what you're speaking about now. a lot of the kiddies' Bibles, the stories, are all Old Testament in general. We have the Jesus' parables and that. But Raf's kind of at the age now when he asks a lot of questions about it, and some of it's quite hard Old Testament, I'll be honest. Some of the messaging is, I mean, David and Goliath, I mean, we try to encourage them to play nicely, and here, we're acting out David killing Goliath. I mean, sometimes I appreciate, obviously it's good for them to know their stories, but I find, Liesel's giving some great advice about, in terms of finding a scripture in the New Testament and kind of talking about that with him. But any other ideas on how to make the New Testament come more alive with young kids?
How old is Raf?
Raf's 5.
Yeah.
But he's probably quite an analytical 5-year-old, I don't think he agrees. He's,
yeah.
So when we do acting out of very inquisitive, he's not so sure, talking about the creation, where's the dinosaurs fit in? A day is a very short, he's already kind of, what about the cavemen? It's fine, So.
Wow, he's a bright kid.
He asked the most difficult questions in the classes.
Yeah.
The teachers were like,
I think it's more about the spirit of the scripture and is about the New Testament, I think, in terms of the ones I wanted to take away, not just know the Old Testament.
Yeah.
Any advice on how to
I would
make that
imagine that inquiring mind, though, is a wonderful thing. So it's a matter of just giving him the time he needs to hear things talked through.
Ben was like that.
Probably. I think there's, from what I remember, there's a lot of good stories in Acts, like, Herod or Peter in prison, those sorts of things. They're always, they're New Testament stories. So you look through Acts, you probably find quite a lot. Quite adventurous. So that would be a thought. You get so much faith from that. Like, you think, if God can get Peter out of prison with an angel, he can fix my problems. And that becomes intrinsic as you're a young person when you start reading those things. So that would be my thought there.
That's great advice, actually. Thank you.
Yeah, the Book of Acts was helpful. The Gospels, I think a lot of it probably comes down to us as parents, but I think whatever lights our imagination probably on to the children quite a bit. But 5. Let's think about 5-year-old. I think helps a 5-year-old.
The example of mum and dad, that's probably the biggest thing. The spiritual example.
So you're going to try and kill him every night in the bar? Probably not.
I think.
But you could do calming the storm. Get him whizzing up and down the bath, the waves going.
Yeah, I think the example of mum and dad.
Because your brother and enemy of God.
That would be my thought, my example of mum and dad, and then just make sure they just keep, a lot of these questions, like mum says, they will pass. And he'll probably go through stages where cavemen's a big deal. You don't think he'll be doubting God at this stage.
I don't.
So I think it's probably just a phase, and you can always work it in as well. You can use your imagination where, I don't know exactly. The Bible doesn't say where cavemen are, but maybe it could be in between the 6th and 7th day, or the 5th and 6th day. I don't know. And then, and you start to at least. He gets some answers to his questions, and they're able really to mature in his faith and just keep him reading, really. Because the more he reads, the more that seed will grow. So that would be my advice, just keep him reading.
Is Raf a good reader?
Oh yeah, in the sense of reading himself, no, not so much yet.
Yeah,
But,
I would say that that's something you will find will develop. Ben has some very good readers. I think by the time they left infant school, they had adult reading age. So they were very good readers.
Because we read the Bible so much.
Well, we read a lot together, didn't we? And we read a lot of Jeremy Fisher and all these sort of things.
He's not in the Bible.
But yeah, so spending time, that sort of a bright, inquiring mind, I think is a really positive thing. something that I really treasure with Ben when he got adolescent-ish, and when you start reading, you really started
Oh, the case for
a
creation.
case for creator,
Oh, yeah.
in case for Christ. They were
These
born your
stages,
Christian
yeah.
one day.
Some were before, some were as, so
Yeah.
it was a bit of both. Probably did a bit of reading aged 13, did a bit more reading aged 16, more reading, still read now.
Yeah, and you also did a lot of reading around evidences.
Yeah.
This was something that was that inquiring mind growing up, really wanted no answers. So, and I treasure that because anybody who gets into an argument with Ben about anything, I'm really sorry for them because when somebody's read so much, they tend to have the answers. So you may find with Raph that he grows up reading for himself, answering his own questions in his teens. That may be a great, great, great blessing. I certainly feel like for us that was a great blessing. Alice also would read, quite extraordinary. Even now, she's a great reader, but she would read things, C.S. Lewis sort of stuff, and really develop her own ideas. So I think that the power of a young mind is amazing, really. I was a terrible reader, dreadful reader. I never read a book until I was probably 16 or 17. I was always too busy outside with goats and pigs and horses and all this stuff, yes. But Ben and Alice were amazing readers, and I think that was a great blessing. So,
I have another.
I think focusing on strengths is a great thing. To a certain degree, help weaknesses become stronger, but your children's strengths will always be what they're good at. So strengths becoming greater strengths is more the key, I think, to helping our children find their way in life. Another question, please.
So this is for older children, and perhaps Ben, you might be able to give us some advice as well. So as some of our children have got older, naturally they're extremely good-looking young men, and there has been, we've hit sort of situations where there are girls that have been interested in them, and and they're obviously at that hormonal stage where they also are finding girls attractive, and I think obviously we've spoken from our point of view. We've also set some boundaries about girlfriends and and that sort of thing, but I think we're very aware that we don't want to sort of set this to make Christianity and following God in any way look sort of like, well, you can't have a girlfriend because we want you to be here. It's just sort of finding the right balance of advising them well, protecting them. Any advice on this sort of stage in life?
This bit over to Alice, who's not here.
How old are they?
So Ollie is 20, he's just turned 20, and Judith is 16, soon to be 17.
I always think, that's difficult. I became a Christian at 14, and that's a big thing. I suppose, I think Mum and Dad always presented being a Christian and doing things God's way as it was help for life. It was like life would run better. It's like the house on the rock. Like your life runs better if you do it God's way.
Yeah.
And you might not see why that is. It might not always feel nice, but with something like being a Christian, I never felt forced into being a Christian, and never felt, because of that, would never have felt forced to not have a girlfriend or something. You know, I would always have felt like, oh, well, if God wants the best for me, then I guess I want that as well. So I guess if He thinks that this is the best way to do things, then it probably is. And you know, I think why would I want to do it a different way? So I felt I was more persuaded by the truth to want to do things God's way rather than told, especially with something like that, with girlfriends and things. So that would be my thought. Would be as much as you can try and persuade using the Bible and using. And then again, that's where again Mum and Dad's example came in, because I could see their example shone about how to live. And because of that, I was like, okay, well, this is clearly how everybody needs to live, because this works, and the TV doesn't work, the media doesn't work, David Beckham's life doesn't work, that sort of thing. So that's a thought. I mean, at the same time, when someone gets to 16 or 20, they are very much their own people.
Yeah.
So I think. Might not be the best person to ask, because I haven't been in that situation with being not a Christian at that age. I think there has to be a stage where I think a bit like what Mum was saying with the roads thing, with the dead ends and stuff. You have to almost like love them to commit to whatever they choose. Obviously, you might think it's the best, but you're going to support them with whatever they choose because you love them. And when you're praying that they choose the right path, and if they don't, then you walk down the path with them, and you're there when they're ready to turn around or whatever. That would be my thought. What do you guys think? That's what I think.
Yeah.
From my point of view on that, there's a huge temptation to say, I told you so.
Yes.
I'm not,
don't say that.
I'm not being conditional.
Yeah, don't say that.
Especially when you've made a mistake yourself, like I was saying about Bishop 23. I was with Bishop Benze, I would say myself a lot of heartache, a lot of sin, a lot of, quite deep issues. But it's affected me the rest of my life, but trying to share that and get through that to your children's heart and brain is very difficult.
Well, if you can share that, that's the kind of so you've done the right thing, and but it's up to you whether you want to listen.
Got really open lines. We have great relationships. They talk very openly with us about everything. So that's. I just thought if you've got any I don't know really, but the persuading and what you were saying before about the decision, helping them make good choices and things is really helpful.
I think Alice was a really encouraging example. She went to Bristol to study 5 years, and I think many people would have said that was a bad idea, because there was a strong church in Bristol. But she went to university there, she had a Bible discussion. But I think she would say, she would probably say that the convictions you have as a young person get you through a bit. I mean, Alice was always very chaste. She was always...
But there was no compromising with Alice.
No, she was always very desired, Alice. But she used to tell them,
in your dreams,
in your dreams.
Get off.
But get off. She was never anything. But that was the conviction that I think, again, she learned through you guys and through the Bible from a young age, and I think that's where you have a chance with 5-year-olds to really make a great impact. So.
Should we talk a little bit about those adolescent years, because especially with Alice, that was a little favourite for me. Again, because of my background, horses were the great saviours of our family in many ways. It sounds very, very privileged, but actually for me horses were quite easy, They were just, what I grew up with. Whatever you grew up with, you can actually do relatively cheaply. So we bought 2 horses when Alice was 10, broke them, and then rode them every day until she was probably 16.
18, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, one died when we were 16. So, but that was, I mean, I remember the conversations Alice and I would have. The great thing about riding young horses is you can't try and do anything else while you're looking up. You have to be 100% there.
Can't look at your phone.
No. But we used to talk a lot. My feeling is that young girls are more challenging than young boys. My feeling is because I always felt with Ben that if we get him convinced, we have no problem. He had such a good mind that he would follow his mind. So it was all a matter of guiding his mind. Well, with Alice, it was about, we don't know what was going on with Alice. She would say, we'd be riding around, and she would say, I'll give you an example. She was about 13, and she said to me, no, probably 11, and she said to me, I'm such a liar. I remember this conversation because I remember thinking, oh my goodness, what is she going to say? And she just talked about how she would say things to be a people pleaser. And the example she gave was how in maths, she was always strong in maths, but she would pretend to be rubbish at maths to fit in. So she would say, I don't understand, I really know, I do what's going on, where she knew very well. I mean, the girl got 10 A star in GCSEs. I mean, she's a very clever girl, but she had this people-pleasing streak in her, where she really wanted to be liked over and above everything else. So we would talk. The lovely thing about writing is we used to talk for ages about this stuff, and that was a great help. But in some ways, I don't think that had to be writing. It could have been sitting in a coffee shop. That could have been sitting in a library.
You probably had some chat shopping with her.
Yes, lots of
Yeah,
shopping.
you and
Tea
her were
shops.
great shoppers, weren't you?
Yeah.
But I think winning Alice, in my head, was more challenging or more complicated because she was such a people pleaser. She has an amazing ability to get on with people. Still has an amazing ability to get on with people. Which was what helped. Another example I'll give of her was how at school when she was probably about 16 or 17, she would go to the library to study the Bible with her friend Ems, which I think is extraordinary. I still think that's extraordinary. And Ems became a Christian, and Ems is still a Christian. But it was this time at school in the library, studying the Bible together, helping her become a Christian, which to me is extraordinary. I'm really proud of her with that. And then when I know she really, really hated having a Bible discussion at university, but she found it so frightening and so uncool. But actually people loved her Bible discussion because she was so cool. Alex became a Christian. Alex is now her boyfriend. So, I mean, it was quite extraordinary how that developed. I wish she was here. I'm sorry she's not. I'd love her to share about that. Maybe she could come another time and share. But she was sort of the cool kid who wanted to fit in, which you weren't. You didn't.
I was taught not to be that.
No, and it just wasn't you. It just wasn't how you ticked, whereas it was how I was ticked. So it might be good to have her share at some point.
I think her perspective on your kids would be 16 and 20-year-olds would be quite. I think she'd have something good to say about that.
I think she would.
Yeah.
I think she would. And I think she'd be very happy to come and circle up after church and talk. And maybe specifically, she would be more helpful. She's a very polar opposite, really.
We're so different, it's bizarre. You know?
Yeah. So you're more intellectually convinced. She is more cool.
So she is cool. I was never cool at school. She was very cool, and it's just a great example. You know,
she was the sort of person who, if Alice was a Christian, being a Christian was cool.
I was always the outcast, the radical outcast at school. I got
we're going to have to wrap up in a minute. Is there anything else? Just before you do that, just so I can explain what we're going to do. So we're going to take communion in a moment. So we just need enough time to do prayer and take the communion together. But then, of course, you're not. How long can you hang around for some chat after? What time do you have to go?
We go at about 1 or so.
Baptism today in Thames Valley. Joseph's getting baptised. So
What time do you need to leave?
1:45.
Fine. Well, we have to be out of the building by 1. So, but we will have enough time for some chat.
Yeah, we'd love to chat.
In fellowship after as well. So, would you mind if we did that in the chat, so that we can be finished by 12? Because that's when we finish. Sorry about that. I think that'll
Sorry for not being more succinct.
I don't think that's, no, I don't think there's a problem at all. But I wanted to give you one last. The reason, sorry, Patricia, is I wanted to also ask you whether you had anything else you wanted to add at the end here, wrap up, or anything you hadn't yet had a chance to say you wanted to say. Any last thoughts for us, in case we never see you again?
I think really just to reiterate God's in control with our children.
We used to
When
pray
there's
a
life,
lot.
there's hope, and not to give up, no matter how complicated it gets for us all in the future, in various ways.
Get them to read the Bible.
One point I think I would make,
That came across.
Yeah.
both Ben and Alice didn't have a connection with God, which is why that passage in Samuel is so special. And we used to make it our goal every year that they would develop a connection with God. And we'd pray every day that they would go a call, and that happened.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely God's hands, not our hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as well, I think these are things are more complicated than we can even fathom a lot of the time. I think at the 5-year-old's mind, go back to the 5-year-old, there's so much going on in there, which will come out at different ages and things. So just, a lot of the time you have to just throw as much godly stuff at the wall and, it will stick. But you don't know what will stick, It might be your example, it might be just them reading.
Not bad examples.
Your repentance.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask him about my sins. I bet he'll articulate it very well. I'm not even a sin kind of person.
That sticks to That sticks to Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming. Thanks for all the things you shared. We're very, very grateful. Thanks to Tim, Shelley.